The white lace felt heavy against my skin, each delicate stitch a reminder of the perfect day I'd always dreamed of. But as I glanced at my sister Lily, fiddling nervously with her phone, a familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. I had a bad feeling about this, a feeling that Lily's presence, usually a source of comfort, was about to become the biggest threat to my happiness. I sat perched on the antique vanity stool in the bridal suite of the Grand Majestic Hotel, watching as the makeup artist meticulously applied the final touches. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the city skyline and casting a warm glow on my ivory wedding gown hanging on the nearby garment rack. The intricate beading shimmered, catching the light like tiny stars. This was it. The day I'd envisioned since I was a little girl was finally here. Yet, beneath the surface of excitement, a tremor of unease ran through me. "Just a little more blush, Scarlett, and you'll be absolutely radiant," the makeup artist, a cheerful woman named Brenda, chirped. I offered a weak smile and tried to relax my tense shoulders. Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one with a sister who had a knack for turning even the most joyful occasions into a stage for her own drama. My mother, Eleanor, stood beside me, adjusting the delicate straps of my dress. Her touch was gentle, her eyes filled with a familiar mix of pride and worry. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Absolutely stunning." "Thanks, Mom." I tried to sound more enthusiastic, but my gaze kept drifting towards Lily, who was slumped on the plush velvet sofa by the window, her attention glued to her phone. Her emerald green bridesmaid dress, a shade I'd carefully chosen, looked almost jarring against her usual vibrant personality. She'd been unusually quiet all morning, offering only monosyllabic responses to any attempts at conversation. "Lily, honey, are you all right?" Mom asked, her voice laced with concern. "You seem a little distant." Lily finally looked up, her expression a carefully constructed mask of nonchalance. "Oh, I'm fine, Mom. Just, wedding stuff. It's a lot." She offered a strained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes before returning to her phone. I exchanged a worried glance with Mom. We both knew Lily. Her fine often meant the opposite, and wedding stuff could be a euphemism for a brewing storm. Growing up, Lily and I were as different as night and day. I was the studious, responsible older sister, the one who always followed the rules and excelled academically. Lily was the free spirit, the artist, the one who thrived on attention, and sometimes her pursuit of attention came at my expense. Our parents, loving and supportive as they were, often inadvertently fueled this dynamic. They praised my achievements, my straight A's, my early acceptance into a prestigious university. Lily, though talented in her own right, often felt overshadowed. I remember the sting in her eyes when our parents would proudly display my report cards on the fridge, while her equally impressive artwork would be relegated to a less prominent spot. Over the years, this subtle imbalance seemed to fester within Lily, manifesting in various ways: cutting remarks disguised as jokes, passive-aggressive comments about my choices, and a general air of competition that always seemed to simmer beneath the surface of our sisterly bond. When I got engaged to David, a kind and intelligent architect I'd met through a mutual friend, Lily's reaction was muted. She offered a perfunctory congratulations, but there was a noticeable lack of genuine excitement in her voice. In the months leading up to the wedding, she'd been helpful with the planning, attending dress fittings and bridal showers. But her enthusiasm felt forced, like she was going through the motions. A week before the wedding, we'd had a seemingly innocuous conversation that now felt heavy with foreshadowing. We were looking through the seating chart, and Lily had casually remarked, "Are you sure about putting Aunt Carol next to Uncle Bob? Remember what happened at Thanksgiving last year?" "Yes, I remember," I'd replied, trying to keep my tone even. "But they've patched things up. Besides, where else would I put them?" Lily had just shrugged, a small, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her lips. At the time, I'd dismissed it as typical Lily being Lily. Now, looking at her hunched over her phone, a cold dread began to creep into my heart. The photographer arrived, a whirlwind of energy and instructions. We posed for the obligatory pre-ceremony photos, Me looking radiant in my dress, Mom beaming with pride, and Lily. Well, Lily managed a few smiles, but her eyes held a distant, almost calculating look. As the time for the ceremony drew closer, the atmosphere in the bridal suite became more charged. The bridesmaids, my closest friends, arrived, their chatter and laughter a stark contrast to Lily's quiet demeanor. They fussed over my hair and makeup, offering words of encouragement and excitement. Lily remained on the sofa, occasionally glancing up from her phone with a tight smile. "Everything okay, Lily?" my maid of honor, Chloe, asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Yep, just peachy," Lily replied, her tone a little too bright, a little too forced. Chloe and I exchanged another worried look. We both knew peachy from Lily usually meant a storm was brewing. Finally, it was time. My heart pounded in my chest as I took my father's arm. He squeezed my hand reassuringly, his eyes filled with emotion. "You look absolutely breathtaking, Scarlett. I'm so proud of the woman you've become." "Thanks, Dad." My voice was barely a whisper. As we walked towards the door, ready to make our way to the waiting limousine, Lily suddenly stood up, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "Wait!" she exclaimed, her voice surprisingly loud, causing everyone in the room to freeze. My stomach plummeted. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. I just wanted to say something before we go," Lily continued, her eyes darting nervously around the room. She took a deep breath, and a strange, almost manic smile spread across her face. "Scarlett, I just want you to know that, well, you're not the only one with a secret today." My blood ran cold. What was she talking about? What secret could she possibly have that she felt the need to reveal right now, moments before I walked down the aisle to marry the man I loved? Lily's gaze locked onto mine, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen in a long time, a raw, almost desperate plea for attention. But beneath that plea, I also saw something else, something colder, something more calculating. "What are you talking about, Lily?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She took another deep breath, her smile widening, and then she said the words that sent a shockwave through the room, shattering the carefully constructed facade of my perfect wedding day. "David isn't who you think he is, Scarlett, and I can prove it." She held up her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen. "I have messages. Messages that will show you the truth." My father's grip on my arm tightened. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The bridesmaids exchanged horrified glances. The air in the room crackled with tension, thick with unspoken questions and a growing sense of dread. Lily had always craved attention, but this felt different. This felt malicious. This felt like she was deliberately trying to sabotage the happiest day of my life. And the worst part was, I had no idea what she was about to reveal. This was not how my wedding day was supposed to go. This was not the fairy tale I had always imagined. This was a nightmare unfolding in real time, and my sister, the person who was supposed to stand by my side, was holding the match that could potentially burn everything to the ground. What were these messages? Who were they from? And what could they possibly reveal that would be so devastating just moments before I said I do? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation, but all I felt was a growing sense of panic and betrayal. The perfect white dress suddenly felt like a costume, and the joyous occasion felt like a carefully staged play about to take a dark and unexpected turn. The silence in the bridal suite was deafening, broken only by Mom's soft gasp. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden stillness. I stared at Lily, her face a strange mixture of triumph and anxiety. What game was she playing? "Lily, what are you doing?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. "Showing you the truth, Scarlett," she repeated, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. She took a step closer, holding her phone out as if it were a weapon. "David isn't the saint you think he is. He's been talking to someone else." A wave of nausea washed over me. Talking to someone else? What did that even mean? David was the most honest, most loyal person I knew. Could this be true? Could my sister, despite her flaws, actually be trying to protect me? Or was this just another one of her attention-seeking stunts, amplified to an unimaginable scale? "Show me," I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. Lily's smile faltered slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to call her bluff so directly. She hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly held out her phone. The screen displayed a string of text messages, the sender identified as David. My heart lurched as I started to read. The messages were suggestive, flirty. Definitely not the kind of messages a man should be sending to anyone other than his fiancé, especially not a week before their wedding. My eyes scanned the dates. Some were from a few weeks ago, others from just a couple of days prior. "See?" Lily said, her voice laced with a strange satisfaction. "He's been lying to you. He's been cheating on you." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages. They painted a picture of David that was completely foreign to me. The man I knew was kind, considerate, and utterly devoted. This felt like a cruel joke. "Who is this person he's been talking to?" I asked, my voice tight with a mixture of disbelief and hurt. Lily smirked. "Oh, you know her. Quite well, actually." She paused for dramatic effect. "It's Chloe." "Chloe? My maid of honor? My best friend?" The bottom dropped out of my stomach. I looked over at Chloe, who was standing frozen, her face ashen. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of fear, but also something else. Guilt? "Chloe, is this true?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Chloe's eyes welled up with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She just shook her head slowly, her face a mask of anguish. "Don't lie, Chloe," Lily interjected, her voice sharp. "I have more proof. Look at these pictures." She swiped through her phone, displaying several photos. My breath hitched in my throat. The pictures showed David and Chloe together, laughing, holding hands, even kissing. My world tilted on its axis. The perfect image I had of my future shattered into a million pieces. The man I was about to marry, the woman I trusted implicitly. They had betrayed me. And my own sister, in her own twisted way, was the one who had exposed their deceit. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. The beautiful bridal suite suddenly felt suffocating, the weight of my dress crushing me. How could this be happening? How could I have been so blind? Just as I felt like I was about to crumble, Mom stepped forward, her face pale but her eyes blazing with a fierce protectiveness I hadn't seen in a long time. "That's enough, Lily," she said, her voice surprisingly firm. "I don't know what your motives are, but you've done enough damage." Lily recoiled slightly, taken aback by Mom's unexpected assertiveness. "But Mom, I was just trying to help Scarlett. She deserves to know the truth." "The truth?" Mom scoffed. "Or your version of it? You've always thrived on drama, Lily. You've always needed to be the center of attention, and you've always had a strange competitiveness with your sister." Lily's face flushed crimson. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Mom challenged, her voice rising. "Remember all those times you tried to undermine Scarlett's achievements? The whispers, the backhanded compliments? This isn't about helping her, Lily. This is about you trying to tear her down." I stared at Mom, stunned. I had never heard her speak to Lily like this before. It was like a dam had finally broken, years of unspoken frustrations and observations finally spilling out. "Mom," I started to say, but Mom held up a hand, her gaze still fixed on Lily. "I've always tried to be fair to both of you," Mom continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I've always tried to understand your sensitivities, Lily. But this is unforgivable. Scarlett is about to get married. This is her day, and you've deliberately tried to ruin it." Lily's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. Tears streamed down her face, her emerald green dress suddenly looking drab and lifeless. I just wanted her to see he wasn't good enough for her. And you thought Chloe was? Mom retorted, her voice laced with sarcasm. Really, Lily? This whole thing is just pathetic. Mom turned to me, her expression softening. Scarlett, honey, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I shook my head, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. The betrayal cut deep, but amidst the pain, a strange sense of clarity began to emerge. Mom was right. Lily's actions, while shocking, weren't entirely surprising. There had always been a darkness lurking beneath her charming exterior, a resentment that had festered for years. But David and Chloe, that was a different kind of pain, a deeper, more profound betrayal. Just then my father, who had been standing silently by the door, stepped forward. His face was grim, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and disappointment. He looked at Lily, and for the first time I saw a complete lack of affection in his gaze. Lily, he said, his voice low and steady, what you've done is despicable. You've hurt your sister deeply, and you've disrespected this entire family. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Scarlett, we'll support whatever decision you make. If you want to call off the wedding, we understand. If you want to confront David, we'll be here for you. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. The weight of the situation was immense, the pain almost unbearable. But amidst the chaos, a flicker of resolve ignited within me. I wouldn't let Lily's bitterness or David and Chloe's betrayal define me. This was still my wedding day, or it was supposed to be. I looked at my father, then at my mother, whose eyes were filled with worry and love. I looked at my bridesmaids, their faces etched with shock and sympathy. And then, my gaze fell back on Lily, who was now sobbing uncontrollably on the sofa. A wave of weariness washed over me. I was tired of the drama, tired of Lily's manipulations, tired of the constant undercurrent of competition that had always defined our relationship. Dad, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Could you go and find David? I need to talk to him. Alone. My father nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of concern and understanding. He left the room, and the silence descended once more, thick with unspoken emotions. Mom came over and hugged me tightly. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice choked with tears. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Mom, I said, patting her back reassuringly. Chloe finally found her voice, her words tumbling out in a rush of guilt and desperation. Scarlett, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. I looked at her, my heart aching with a mix of anger and sadness. Chloe, we've been friends for years. How could you do this to me? She just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. I was stupid. I was selfish. Please, Scarlett, please forgive me. I didn't answer. Forgiveness felt a long way off. Right now, all I felt was a profound sense of betrayal. A few minutes later, my father returned, David trailing behind him, his face a mask of confusion and apprehension. He looked at me, his eyes questioning. Scarlett, what's going on? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I took another deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. This was it. The moment of truth. David, I said, my voice clear and steady, despite the turmoil raging inside me. Lily just showed me some messages, and some pictures. Messages between you and Chloe. His face paled instantly. His eyes darted towards Chloe, who was still sobbing quietly. Scarlett, I can explain, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Explain what, David? I asked, my voice hardening. Explain the flirty messages? Explain the pictures of you and my maid of honor? Kissing? He looked down, shame etched on his face. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes. My heart shattered into a million pieces. The pain was sharp, visceral, almost unbearable. But amidst the devastation, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I knew what I had to do. I looked at David, my eyes dry despite the tears that had welled up moments before. "David," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "this wedding is off." A collective gasp filled the room. David looked up, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Scarlett, no! Please! I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I love you." "No, David," I said, shaking my head slowly. "You don't love me. You wouldn't have done this if you did. And Chloe, I can't even look at you right now." I turned to my parents and my bridesmaids. "I can't go through with this. Not today. Maybe not ever." Mom rushed over and hugged me tightly, her tears now flowing freely. Dad placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, his expression a mixture of sadness and support. My bridesmaids gathered around me, offering words of comfort and reassurance. Lily, still sobbing on the sofa, looked up at me, her face a mask of guilt and something else. Relief? Had this been her plan all along? To sabotage my happiness and somehow, what? Make herself feel better? I didn't have the energy to analyze her motives right now. All I wanted was to get out of this dress, out of this room, away from the wreckage of my perfect wedding day. "I need to go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mom nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll take care of everything." As my bridesmaids helped me out of the heavy lace gown, I glanced back at Lily one last time. She was still sitting on the sofa, her face buried in her hands. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I didn't see triumph or satisfaction in her gaze. I saw emptiness, a profound, heartbreaking emptiness. I walked out of the bridal suite, leaving behind the shattered dreams and the wreckage of a day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life. As I stepped into the waiting limousine, the city skyline no longer looked warm and inviting. It felt cold and indifferent, reflecting the emptiness in my own heart. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be able to trust again. But as the limousine pulled away from the Grand Majestic Hotel, I knew one thing for sure. My wedding day hadn't gone as planned, but in the end, I had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the people you think you know best are the ones who are capable of inflicting the deepest wounds. And sometimes, the greatest act of strength is walking away, even when it feels like your whole world is falling apart.